Yeah.
All right. Oh, it's very thick. This one seems to be a little thicker. Round 2.
Round 2. Thought you were about to eat the whole thing right there. That was pretty good. I like the second one a lot.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Now for number 3.
Number 3, just cheesy. So,
you want to do the honors the third time?
yeah, we don't have to tear off anything because it's the last one.
Hey, don't be hogging it all now. Oh, we're dropping stuff everywhere.
There's a tomato in my Mountain Dew. Aside from those 2 sauces, there's just tomato, lettuce, 3 blend cheese, and meat.
I think also the fact that when you work across, like the flavor's slowly changing. So when you have chipotle cheese, just cheese. So it's kind of like the slow evolution of the flavor.
Right.
Did you have a favorite of these 3?
I like the one in the middle the most. I like the one with both. I thought that was the best one for sure.
Yeah, I felt like the one with just the cheese was a little bit on the weaker taste side. It seemed like that was the first two. The 2 of the chipotle had a much more bold flavor,
right?
And the cheese was a little bit bland compared to the other 2.
Yeah, that was just like a regular beef chalupa without the sour cream at Taco Bell.
Yeah, it does still seem gimmicky to me. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it seems a little gimmicky. But I would probably like the center one in the full size.
Yeah, that would be a nice option you could do in the kiosk. You know, customize each of the 3 in the triple lupa with both the cheese and the chipotle sauce. I'd be down for that.
Yeah. All right, so the not tripletta, the tripalupa, right?
Triple lupa.
Triple lupa is approximately $3.59, depending on your location. The combo is like $5.99, I believe.
Right. So the combo, the box, it's the triple lupa, the crunchy taco, cinnamon twists, and a drink. So that's pretty good.
It's a pretty good deal, I think. If you guys don't ever watch this channel, he is the Taco Bell expert, and he knows the whole menu probably better than people that work there. So I want to ask him, how would you rank that on a scale of 1 to 10 compared to the Taco Bell menu?
Compared to the Taco Bell menu, let's see. Well, I like the concept. They haven't really had anything like this since we started doing videos.
Yeah.
But as far as the actual taste goes, it's not that much different from like a regular beef chalupa.
Yeah.
Now the chipotle sauce does add something to it.
Yeah.
But you take that, add on the gimmick, I would probably go maybe a 7 or 8. I didn't dislike it, but I didn't think like it was amazing either.
Yeah.
It's just a nice standard item in Taco Bell. What do you think?
I would say for uniqueness, it's got to be close to a 10 because it's so bizarre looking.
It's like when you look at it, you're like, what the heck is this like 3-piece like chalupa? It's so weird.
It looks like someone made like a model fence or something like that and go around like some taco house or something. But taking the gimmick aside, I mean, flavor-wise, I'd say about a 7.5.
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
Yeah, 7.5. It's middle standard Taco Bell taste. It's not revolutionary.
I think it's a lot better of a deal to get it with the box than just by itself. I'd feel kind of underwhelmed if I spent almost $4 on just that alone. I'd rather get a couple extra things for $6.
Yeah, for $2.50 more, you get the cinnamon twist, the drink, and the taco. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's good.
All right, well, I guess that's it.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks for letting me take over the channel.
If you want more videos like this, check out Brandon's channel, which I will also link below. And I don't do a lot of food reviews here. I probably won't do that many more, but I'm just trying to mix things up while I post more content in these crazy times we're having right now. And I'll be back in a couple days with something else.
I bet everyone looks forward to that one.
All right, be safe, everyone. Take care.
Yeah, please be safe. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
We're going to go through some napkins on this one. We're going through some napkins on this one. I don't 100% trust that screen. That's the problem. I don't trust that screen. No.
Yeah, that's fine. Just, the wind.
Sorry.
Okay.
We are witnessing the end of immigration as we know it. The northern border between the U.S. and Canada has been closed to all non-essential traffic. And according to NPR, Trump is set to announce the southern border will be closed to all migrants. We are still seeing ICE raids, and we are still seeing immigration courts function, which means people will be leaving, but they will not be coming in. In Europe, it's even more drastic. the European Union has been enacting border controls between its own member states. An area called the Schengen Zone is supposed to allow people to freely move between countries like France, Germany, Austria, etc. But now even these countries are shutting their borders, and they're ending their refugee programs, notably Germany, as well as the United Nations expressing that refugee relocation must be suspended. Now, some people feel like this is just temporary. We've got a couple months ahead of us. But we've already heard from the governor of New York that this could be 45 days. It means, at minimum, based on these numbers, 3 months. However, it's worse than that. The U.S. has been preparing for an 18-month plan, which means at least for the next year and a half, we will not see immigration pulled back in any form. For the most part, maybe this will change, but it doesn't seem like it will be the case. We don't know what to expect other than whenever there's a pandemic, our culture changes dramatically. Now we are seeing suspension of some trade. Though many people are trying to keep their trade lines open, China has suspended some exports to the U.S., and we are seeing Donald Trump invoke the Defense Production Act, meaning much of our production will return to the United States. Not only are we witnessing the end of immigration, but it seems like we're witnessing the end of globalization. Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump seemingly in agreement on this problem. Let's get started and take a look at exactly what's going on. Because we have more than just immigration and globalization to worry about. Conflicts within our own countries are going to become a serious threat, as we're seeing looting and potentially some rioting in even European nations. The last thing any of these countries is going to want to do is open up their borders when they can't even deal with their own problems. The first story I have for you: immigration grinds to a halt as President Trump shuts down the borders. Before we read this, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are several ways you can give. The best thing you can do, however, is share this video. I think this information is going to be pretty important for a couple of reasons. It's going to dramatically change our country and the world. But surprisingly, we have seen Donald Trump be praised by progressives and liberal pundits on TV. And where are the complaints about what Trump is doing on the border? It seems like Trump is actually getting his wishes. Through the emergency we're facing, he's enacting a lot of the changes he's wanted to enact. But let's be honest, if these changes were made before the emergency, we would all be a lot better off. And I think that's why you're not seeing that much criticism of the president and his decision to close the borders. Because, dare I say it, he was right. NPR reports President Trump plans to seal off the U.S.-Mexico border to migrants under a law intended to protect the country from communicable disease. A move that comes as the U.S. immigration system grinds to a halt in response to the growing coronavirus pandemic. At a press conference Wednesday, Trump said the southern border would not close completely, but the move would allow the administration to quickly deport asylum seekers and other migrants who cross the U.S.-Mexico border illegally without due process. Meanwhile, the U.S. and Canada have agreed to close their mutual border to all non-essential traffic, following earlier restrictions imposed by the Trump administration on travel from Europe and China. The dramatic developments on the northern and southern borders come as immigration is being curtailed in other ways too. U.S. Immigration and Citizenship Service, the agency in charge of processing green cards and citizenship applications, as well as conducting asylum interviews, is closing its field offices to the public. Immigrants fighting deportation are having their cases postponed, and some immigration courts are limiting dockets, and others are closing. Refugee resettlement is temporarily suspended as well, according to the United Nations, because of the coronavirus pandemic. There are about 100 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Mexico and about 600 in Canada, compared to nearly 8,000 in the United States. Immigrant advocates accuse the Trump administration of exploiting the pandemic to advance its crackdown on asylum seekers, and the partial closure of the southern border, where thousands have amassed in Mexico, is sure to draw legal challenges. Now listen, Joe Scarborough, Dana Bash, and Bill Hanover have given praise to Trump over the specific things he's done recently. They aren't coming out, for the most part, and screaming about what Trump is doing on the border. And I think it's obvious. How do you criticize the president for doing what many other countries around the world are doing in response to a serious global threat? At this point, people realize there's nothing you can do. Trump is right. The borders must be secured. If we are telling everyone to lock down in their homes to the best of their ability, it's not mandatory. It's just want people to self-quarantine, social distancing. If businesses are being shut down by mandate, then we absolutely need to make sure that our borders are not being, well, people aren't entering illegally in defiance of the rules we have for our own citizens. In a quote we see, President Trump has been falsely scapegoating immigrant communities in the name of public safety since he came into office, said Michelle Brain at the Women's Refugee Commission. This rule would unquestionably violate both domestic and international law and is an abdication of our moral responsibility to protect vulnerable people. I find that, quote, detestable. In the face of the United Nations saying refugee relocation would be suspended as we deal with a global crisis, to pretend like Trump is doing something wrong, I find absolutely detestable. In addition, immigration advocates and physicians who study detention facilities are calling on U.S. authorities to release detained immigrants who pose no threat to public safety, starting with detainees who have medical conditions that put them at high risk for severe complications from COVID-19. So let's move on here, and I want to show you exactly why. While there are, for sure, people who are critical of this, we are seeing potentially, well, in New York, for instance, in California, people are being released from prisons. And the point there is that we have our own problems to worry about right now. But it seems like everyone's panicking. But I want to show you why this isn't temporary. Or at least, I should say it's temporary to an extent. A lot of people think this may only be a few months. I don't think so. MIT Technology Review writes, we are not going back to normal. Social distancing is here to stay for much more than a few weeks. It will upend our way of life in some ways forever. I think we're going to be locked down. We're not going to be locked down by National Guardsmen patrolling the streets or police telling you to get back in your home like we're seeing in some countries. We're going to be locked down due to social stigma for the most part. Everyone is saying, stay home. Only go out if you need to. Viral videos show people in New York yelling at pedestrians to go home because they could potentially spread COVID-19. And a new report shows that young people are one of the largest groups being hospitalized. Though they are still likely to survive, this is believed because they're responding well to ventilation. What if we run out of ventilators? That could change. This is our community coming together saying, we must do what must be done. So now we see this. To stop coronavirus, we will need to radically change almost everything we do. How we work, exercise, socialize, shop, manage our health, educate our kids, take care of our family members. We all want things to go back to normal quickly. But what most of us have probably not yet realized, yet will soon, is that things won't go back to normal after a few weeks or even a few months, and some things never will. It's now widely agreed, even in Britain finally, that every country needs to flatten the curve, impose social distancing to slow the spread of the virus, so that the number of people sick at once doesn't cause the healthcare system to collapse, as it is threatening to do in Italy right now. That means the pandemic needs to last at a low level until either enough people have had COVID-19 to leave most immune, assuming immunity lasts for years, which we don't know, or there's a vaccine. How long would that take? And how draconian do social restrictions need to be? Yesterday, President Donald Trump, announcing new guidelines, such as a 10-person limit on gatherings, said that with several weeks of focused action, we can turn the corner and turn it quickly. In China, 6 weeks of lockdown are beginning to ease now that the cases have fallen to a trickle. Well, not that I believe China. But it won't end there. As long as someone in the world has the virus, breakouts can and will keep occurring without stringent controls to contain them. In a report yesterday, researchers at Imperial College London proposed a way of doing this. Impose more extreme social distancing measures every time admissions to intensive care units start to spike, and relax them each time admissions fall. Here's how that looks in a graph. This is extending well into November 2021. We can see that March 20th, we're expected to see nearly 1,200 weekly ICU cases, threatening our medical system's capacity. Then, once the cases start going down because of social distancing, we will ease these restrictions, and they will spike again in September, which will mean more restrictions. For those that are listening, let me explain. It's a wave. Every few months, we must reenact these limits. This means through the duration of this, borders will be locked down. People will not be traveling, and they will only ease these restrictions within their communities for the most part. We are looking at least 18 months of full-on immigration suspension.
And if you get into trouble,
Now, there's
I'll
probably
bail you
going to be some travel and some immigration, for sure. Nothing's absolute. But for the time being,
The government
who's going
here
to complain
is
about a
such a
country
medieval
saying we are
view
facing a
to
crisis and the
respond.
borders must be locked down? This is why it was so shocking to me to see Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders at the last debate arguing for not deporting people. It's almost as if they're a week behind the news. As most of us were watching what was happening around the world with borders being closed, I think it was reasonable for most people to conclude we cannot have people coming in unchecked. And if they do, they need to be deported because we are facing extreme restrictions on what we do in the face of a global crisis. For now, it looks like everyone is now falling into agreement. This story from The Hill. U.S. plan warns coronavirus pandemic could last 18 months. And now people are starting to wake up to the reality. In coronavirus border shutdown, a reminder that national sovereignty matters for Washington Examiner. But it's not just this. I did a segment the other day. It seems that the global crisis has now proven conservatives correct on the Second Amendment and border controls. As we see people in urban centers, which are typically Democrat strongholds, flocking to gun stores and buying out their entire stock. Why? Police are saying around the world they are going to be stepping back because they can't handle this. Police in New York, some of them, have tested positive for the coronavirus and are being isolated. This means that you are likely in many circumstances to be on your own, but also there is severe uncertainty. We just don't know what's going to happen. On the immigration front, we're now seeing the real danger to unchecked border crossings. If people start crossing the border and they're carrying the coronavirus, we are going to be introducing individuals who violate our laws and social norms with no regard, and then will potentially spread that virus. Now it makes sense, doesn't it? When there was no threat, it was easy to say, who cares, we'll be fine. But now that we're facing the threat, if we can look back and say, if only we acted sooner, before the threat. It's the curse of I guess, hindsight. And often, because we think everything is fine, or because the numbers were low, we say, oh, who cares, nothing will happen. And then once it does, we say, if only we did it sooner. Yeah, Trump was right. He was right about the border, he was right about China, and now look where we are. Well, that's why I think we're seeing progressives praise him. I find it to be rather shocking after all. But check this out. In a story from Washington Examiner, they also say that things will never go back to normal, saying national borders can be expected to harden, where for decades they've become increasingly porous. Nations facing contagion from abroad sealed or semi-sealed their borders. This, I suspect, was not simply health quarantining, but animated by a turning inward, a desire or instinct for national identity. Governments that recently fostered the idea that their citizens were Europeans rather than members of distinct nationalities drew a line around the people who knew they were indeed a people. Italians in lockdown didn't sing the EU anthem on their balconies. They sang patriotic songs about Italy, for worse and for better. This pandemic will stoke suspicion of foreign peoples and lands, and will give extra force to increasingly persuasive arguments that nation-states are the most effective bulwarks against arrogant encroachments on self-government. In Europe, they did say they were European and that was their identity. But did Germany lock down the borders around the EU? Germany locked down the borders around its own country. When push comes to shove, they said, we are Germans, and the borders are being shut. They are now shutting out refugees. UN is saying the same thing. It's easy to talk big when you are secure. But as soon as the threat looms, people immediately say, forget it. Trump keeps immigration courts open. Despite coronavirus risks, with 58 courts still open, the prospect of courthouses acting as incubators and disseminators of the virus remains pronounced. Well, of course, this is the position that the Guardian put in. But I'm not here to talk about whether they should or should remain open, just to point out that they are. And like I said early on, that means migrants will be moving out, and they will not be moving in. Like I said, this is the end of immigration and globalization as we know it. The New York Times says locked down Europe faces closed border, economic wounds, and dire warnings. The continent hit a bleak milestone in the coronavirus epidemic, surpassing China in cases and deaths. A leader who knows something about confinement pleaded for citizens to accept it for now. the United Nations to suspend refugee resettlement abroad due to coronavirus travel restrictions, and this is from France 24. And it's obvious we know why. But to see Germany do the same thing is absolutely shocking. This story from TRT World. Germany, of all countries, the country that was bringing in so many refugees, and many other European countries, are now saying no to everyone. And perhaps now the people in these countries will start to realize why it was dangerous to open up their borders and make them as weak as they were. It's a global pandemic, man. But I want to move on from here. I want to talk about the internal struggles that these countries are facing. And it's actually really scary for us too. I hope you have all taken precautions. You have your first aid kits, you've bought some groceries. You don't need to hoard and build a bunker or anything like that. But buying supplies that'll last you for a decent amount of time makes sense. I don't know how long, 2 weeks, a month, I have no idea. Take a look at this. In Italy, last week, Corona chaos. Italy coronavirus lockdown, medical supplies looted, and panic buyers strip shelves as whole country is quarantined. Did you hear about the rioting and looting that took place? The police coming out to stop people who are desperate for medical supplies? Because it's also happening in London now. London to get a 12-hour warning before coronavirus restrictions are put into place. See, London, the UK, was actually a bit lax, relying on herd immunity. If people got the virus quickly, they could get through this fast. Now they've realized that they can't. But we are seeing something similar. Supermarkets are calling for police protection amid fears of rioting. Why? Well, because it actually happened. Looting louts. Thugs smash Sainsbury doors after stealing alcohol as coronavirus pressure hits supermarkets. That's right. Looting in the UK. Looting in Italy. I fear that it may happen in the US soon, but I'll tell you this. People in the United States, they got guns everywhere, so maybe people will think twice when they do it here. But it happens. It really, really does. Over in the UK, Boris Johnson plans London lockdown as crisis escalates. Now, you may think the lockdown will prevent some of this looting, but supermarkets are still desperate, and they're calling for police protection. This is a remarkable turnaround, I suppose, because just previously, yesterday, the UK was saying there will not be a lockdown. They have resisted every step. I understand why. But now we are seeing it's not just about fears of some external threat. It's that we have to secure our own oxygen mask before securing the mask of those sitting next to us. If our own countries are facing the threat of looting, product shortages, medicine shortages, then the last thing we can do is resettle refugees and allow migrants to come into our countries. This is going to create a boom in nationalism, and it probably already is. From Financial Times, they say, Boris Johnson's face bore the strain of the past 3 weeks, during which coronavirus went from being a distant menace to one that threatened to consume Britain's economy, spread death across the country, and dominate his premiership. The British Prime Minister has gone in a matter of days from advising people to wash their hands to planning the closure of London, followed by the rest of the country, as government officials expect the capital to be locked down as early as Friday. New York may very well see the same thing. Now, what's particularly interesting is this kind of proves Brexit right at the best possible time. The vote, December 13th, a resounding victory for conservatives. And now everyone's locking down. It's rather remarkable, I would say. Now, I don't want you to think that the U.S. is going to be too different. And I'm not trying, and I know a lot of people are going to get mad. They're going to say that this is fear-inducing, it's panic-inducing. We are seeing in the UK, the police to start graduated withdrawal of service if outbreaks worsen. You are being warned right now, London, that the police are going to have a gradual withdrawal of service. They won't be there if you call 911. Certainly, we've seen stories of people overreacting, calling 911 because people are cutting them in line because, they're at a supermarket and they need toilet paper. And there have been some police departments in the U.S. that have received 911 calls because people ran out of toilet paper. Some people, man, are just crazy. But over in New York, NYPD unit fills in, the film unit fills in as NYPD precinct. 31 cops have called in sick. The film unit are typically to protect film shoots. They are now being brought in for what appears to be regular duty because so many officers are calling out sick. We can see that New York City is beginning to release inmates amid the coronavirus outbreak. I think it's obvious where this goes. we're hoping everyone stays inside. And it's possible that we're not going to need as many police because most people will be inside. But if they're releasing inmates, hopefully these inmates go...
Traveling to Horizon Lunar Colony. Prepare your defenses. Select your hero.
Go and do the right thing. You know, I assume they're criminals, but maybe they'll understand the importance of staying home and not going out. In the event there is crime, I'd be willing to imagine it's going to be less because most people will not be outside. Less people to rob, for instance. Less stores to go after. But just because a store is closed can't mean it can't be robbed. It may be looted. Which brings me to the next shocking story. Philadelphia has announced that they're going to also have a gradual withdrawal of service. They're not going to be arresting certain people for what they call nonviolent crimes. I've talked about this on the podcast a couple days ago. You may have seen it. But it's actually the stupidest thing, in my opinion, to announce. That you could burglarize a home and the cops won't arrest you. You can steal a car and the cops won't arrest you. We can talk about globalization. We can talk about trade. But I think there are serious problems we're facing within our own countries as well. And this is why we are going to see immigration halted. Bernie Sanders published an opinion piece on March 15th for CNN, in which he called out specifically globalization policies, saying, as a result of globalization and our disastrous trade policies, which I have opposed, we have been outsourcing millions of jobs and factories overseas that have gutted our economy. Now we are seeing another tragic and devastating result of those policies, as we find ourselves dependent on other countries to provide the most essential things that we need to combat a pandemic and protect American lives. Trade is a good thing, but it must protect American workers and protect our national security so that we can produce what we need in the event of a national crisis. That means we must enact fair trade policies that bring production and manufacturing back.
over yet.
Objective lost. New defense point. Objective B.
Regen burst activated.
I have to get back in the fight.
An expedient solution. Stupidity.
This was something.
You're mistaken.
Reinhardt's over here by himself.
Score 0-2. Switching sides. Prepare to attack. Select your hero.
We're all
Now show them.
quit screwing
from
around
afar.
and get ready to move.
Attack commences in 30 seconds.
It's hard to just sit around knowing there's someone out there that needs to be blown up. If at first you
I
don't
can't
see
wait to get into the fight. The little thing.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Attack commencing. Capture objective A.
Let's move out. All better. For now.
Objective A captured. Commence attack objective.
Heal up here. always liked women. Immortality bubbles down. Let them up. Area destroyed. No rest for the weary. Get over here and heal up. I'm not a young man anymore.
This silver healer's taking the game a little too seriously.
I've got you in my sights. Nothing sweet. Tactical necessity. You all look like you needed some healing.
I am ready to unleash coalescence.
The power of destruction. My will. Kill the Mahal.
Let them up. Heal up here.
Огонь по готовности!
Patched up. Not on ice yet. That's the best you can do. I've got you in my sights. That'll warm you up. Light them up.
I'm back in the fight.
No rest for the weary.
Up. 60 seconds remaining.
mission ain't over yet.
Seconds remaining.
I'm fun, friend. You're all right, fun, fun.
Knock me down and I'll keep getting back up.
Overtime. Defeat. Play of the game.
What's a fun game?